Welcome back to Beyond Stereo, the Dolby Atmos podcast. I'm Dan Bucknell, and here we talk about the world of immersive technologies aimed at creating more meaningful and emotional experiences for music, film, and just about everything else. Today's guests are Matt Wallace and Will Kennedy, two award-winning producers and Dolby Atmos mix engineers with decades of experience between them. Together, they've worked with many first-class artists from around the world in their Studio Delux, located at the legendary Sound City.
Hey, Will. Hey, you're at the studio.
Lucky.
Nice one. Good to see you guys. Thank you so much for coming on. This is awesome.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I would love for you guys to just introduce yourselves, first and foremost, what you guys do and how you got into the industry and all of that sort of stuff. And then, we can go from there, see what comes up.
Sounds good. All right. Well, you can go first.
Oh, fine. I thought you were going to go first, and I
Oh,
was
I
over
can
here
go.
doing
Oh, yeah.
settings.
Well, I can go first. Okay.
Okay.
I basically was in bands since I was 13. From 13 till whenever, 28, and played in bands. I was the nerdy guy that decided to record our music on cassettes, and then we played shows, and then I eventually built an 8-track studio in my parents' garage and started by recording all the local bands. The studio was ostensibly for my own record, which never happened. But I had worked with a bunch of different people, and ultimately one of them was a band called Sharp Young Men that became Faith No Man, that became Faith No More. So I recorded the original rhythm section in my parents' suburban garage in 82 or 3. And then I had a studio out in Oakland, California. Then I worked at various 24-track studios, moved to LA in 88, and produced and engineered and mixed records. Will was one of my engineers. He and I worked on a number of projects together, so we became friends and coworkers. And then about 4 years ago, we somehow kind of stumbled into having Atmos, because we'll both attest that neither one of us. I thought it was Will's idea. He thought it was my idea to get into it. And the thing that got us into it was really emotional content. The technology did nothing for me. But he and I heard a Liz Phair song at our friend Brad Wood's studio, and we were like, man, that's just got this emotional content that was, for me, completely unexpected. So once we heard that, then we started really thinking about it, like, okay, what are we going to do? And Will drew up all the designs and the plans and did the calculations, and so since then, I guess Will says we've done about like 500 Atmos mixes, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we're hovering somewhere between 450 and 500.
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Wow, that's huge.
So,
very, very impressive. and how about you, Will? So how did you sort of get into it? Other than that, obviously that intro was pretty much for you as well.
Obviously our stories merge at some point.
So where did you start?
I grew up in a tiny little farming community outside of Niagara Falls, New York. I had a couple of cousins that were musicians, and my family, there's nothing musical going on in my family, but I think they inspired me to some degree. I started listening to a lot of music. My dad he had a great collection of jazz records that I started listening to when I was a kid. And, I played in the school bands and all that stuff. But when I got to high school, started playing in the jazz band, something switched. I mean, it was slowly coming, but ultimately that led me to, despite the fact that everybody around me was, there was just this constant buzz of, you're crazy if you want to do music for a living. I was like, I'm going to figure out a way to do this. And it took me a while. I went to 3 different colleges, the third of which was Berklee College of Music. I did not know when I arrived there that I was going to end up doing recording. But over my 4 years there, or I guess it was just 3, because I'd gone to 2 other colleges before that, trying to, again, not do music, have a backup plan, and it just didn't work. I got further and further into the recording program there, and I was like, this is it. This is what I'm meant to do. And then I bounced around after graduating. I worked at Ocean Way, Nashville briefly. Then I moved to New York City. I worked at a great studio, which is unfortunately no longer there. It's a Hampton Inn now, called Right Track Recording, which was right in Times Square. Then took a detour for a few years. I had some health issues that meant I needed a stable job that was 9 to 5 with benefits. And I ended up working at Harvard University in the AV department for 4.5 years.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
When I turned 30, when I was about to turn 30, the itch to do recording never left me. And I said, okay, I've got to know. I've got to know if I could have run with the big dogs. And I looked, having done Nashville, having done New York, I was like, I'm going to be super focused now. The records I want to work on are being made in LA. So I moved to LA. It took maybe a year and a half or so, and through a mutual friend that was a mentor to me named David Bianco, David introduced me to Matt, and Matt very kindly brought me on as one of his engineers, and the rest kind of follows what Matt said. Yeah, I engineered for him for a
Yep.
while. We I don't think we ever really went our separate ways. We just didn't work together as much for a
Mhm.
while.
Right.
Budgets went away. It was harder for either of us really to afford to have more than
Oh,
just us on any session because you just didn't have the money to hire anybody else. And then the Atmos thing came along.
yeah. Yeah, that's very much what happened to me. Was that yeah, the budgets just diminished so much that I could no longer hire Will, and we had some other kind of friends that we all were in a bit of a pool there of engineering. But it just got to the point where like, well, you can't pay for an engineer, so I ended up engineering again, which I was hoping not to do because I started that way, and it was really great having someone like Will who I could really rely on. So anyway, that's what happened.
That makes sense. Yeah, I suppose that's a kind of very similar story for probably a lot of engineers who start out as musicians, kind of find a way to do it just for themselves, and then they end up like other people like that, and okay, I guess I'm going to do your one now, and then your one, and
Yeah,
then it becomes that way. So that's kind of my story as well, very similar.
yeah.
But I mean, the interesting thing is that like that LA thing, that's a big leap, right? Were there any big sacrifices that you sort of took for that?
Well, I mean, for me, I like the Bay Area. I lived in the Bay Area. That was kind of my
Okay.
home, and I liked living up there. I liked working at the studios there. I liked the bands. I think what happened for me is that I got tired of doing demos for bands that would ultimately get signed, and then it was kind of the same old story. Hey, Matt, we got signed. Like, yoo-hoo, champagne. Then like, oh, the label wants to use another producer, but you're going to engineer. Like, okay, cool. Then it's like, well, the producer's hired and he's got his own engineer. So I actually moved to LA pretty much because I was just tired of that stuff, and I was like, I'm going to go to LA for a couple of years and either make a name for myself and then move back in a couple of years or come back even sooner and get into some other profession. But I ended up being, I mean, I've been down in LA now for like, I don't know, like 40 years now. So it's something kind
Yeah.
of
Wow.
ridiculous, but it was supposed to be 2 years. But I mean, I think there is something you give up when you leave. I mean, here's the thing, when you leave your kind of home base, there's a comfort there, which is really lovely. It's nice to have your friends. But the thing I will say for Los Angeles, and a lot of people like to give it, speak ill of LA, but I think LA's got a lot more of everything. It's got a lot more of amazing things. It's got a lot more of kind of challenging things. And for me, LA, people go to LA not because of the scenery. They go there because they want to make something of themselves, whether they're an actor, a comedian, a musician, producer, whatever. And so when you go down there, it gives you the opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself. And because if you, sometimes when you reinvent yourself in your hometown, people never take you seriously. Like if I decide to change my name to Maddie Max or whatever, they'd be like, yeah, that's really funny. But if you go to a new town, you can call yourself that name and you can actually grow into this kind of new exoskeleton that you kind of assembled. And to me, LA is very much like that. And I will die on this hill. There's no better city to make records than Los Angeles. Even at the height when New York was doing really well, I had such frustration trying to get simple pieces of gear in New York. With like, oh, we might get that from Nashville in a couple of days. LA, you're like, hey, I want that fuzz box Jimi Hendrix used at Woodstock. Three guys will show up at your door with that fuzz box. I mean, it's
Wow.
they want to make records and they every single piece of gear, whatever you need. I've never heard no from anybody in LA. It's never been like, well, I wish we could do that, or how about in a couple of days? They're like, we'll be there in 25 minutes. And that kind of support and that kind of seriousness makes for really great record making. I've worked up in Vancouver, Nashville, New York, Atlanta, everywhere, San Francisco, LA, hands down, by far the best place to make records, by far.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Okay. And
Yeah.
and and for you, well, like so you said you moved to LA specifically as well. So what was your experience on that?
So I had bounced around quite a bit before I moved out here. And I mean, Matt, how old were you when you moved down?
28. I was
You were
28.
28. Okay, so I was 30. We were about the same.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I I knew I had talked with enough people who had done this for a living that I knew if I was going to be successful, and by successful, I mean if I was going to be able to pay the rent and feed myself doing this,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was going to have to make like it was, I had to be all in. I had to be willing to do whatever I could possibly do and probably a little extra in order to make it work. Um, and I'd seen, like I said, I lived in Nashville. I worked in a studio in Nashville. I lived in New York City. I worked in a couple of studios in New York City. I understood what kind of sacrifice uprooting myself and moving across the country was going to be. So that wasn't, no, none of what happened surprised me because I'd been through it twice before.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah, I suppose, yeah, that it is such a big thing to even decide to move into this creative world that we find ourselves in. For me, my experience, and the reason I asked that is because, yes, I was kind of in a like a warehouse sort of job, and I basically got to a point in my life where I was like, I can't continue to do things that I'm just not interested in like this. I got to like a fork in the road, and it was like, if I'm ever going to go for this, I've got to just completely own this and go and really go hard. And it was like a huge jump. It felt like this is a leap of faith. And if this doesn't work, I've got nothing else to go to. Like this has to work. And of course, that's what made it work.
You can't have a plan B.
That's
You
it.
can't have a plan B. And it's interesting now we're in this space since streaming dominates everything, and because the production of music has become so democratized, you don't have to save up your money for months as a band or as an artist to then go into a studio that costs a bunch of money and have a whole crew of people helping you make a record. So many people are, and let alone getting that record reproduced and then out in a store. You don't have to worry about any of that anymore. So I think people feel as if somehow being financially, I'm not even going to say successful, I'm just going to say stable in music as a career should be easier. And the opposite is true. It is harder now than it has ever been. And the failure rate in this business and in any entertainment business has always been unbelievably high. So if you're not willing to give it every last ounce of what you have in order to do this for a living, you're going to get spit out the other end. If you have a plan B, you're going to fall back on the plan B because this is going to test you every way it possibly can to see if you really want to do it.
Yeah, when I got started, I took a one class in a junior college uh, to learn a little bit about audio and about physics and sonics and all that kind of thing. And this guy David Porter, who owned this studio called Music Annex, which was very large, like 4 or 5 room facility in Menlo Park, California. And I remember when I talked to him, this is like an 82 or 3. And I said, yeah, I really want to get into this for a living. And in 82 and 83, he said, don't do it. He said, "There's no money in it. It's a long, hard slog. Don't do it." That's like that's a long time ago, and I think
When
to
there
what
was a lot more money to be made than there is
there
now.
was there
That's
was
the
there
point.
was. I missed the mountains of cocaine and people spending $1 million on records. I missed that part of it, but I did have moments where we had some good budgeted records. But back to what Will was saying, I think that the phrase that this came to me later on in life, and that is the phrase "burn the boats." I think when you go to LA, if you're going to make it, you have to burn the boats because you cannot have an opportunity to go back. You've got to just stay in there and go, here I am, and make the best of it. And you know what? Even the worst day of 16-hour days and dealing with difficult artists or producers, whatever, is still better than a shitty job, stocking shelves or whatever it is. It's still a great job for your guts. Not great for your pocketbook, but man, it feels. I starved for the first 8 years, literally starved, just trying to make a living at. But man, did I enjoy being there at the genesis of young bands trying to discover their sound, and me being honored to be there and help them kind of shepherd them along. It's fucking amazing.
I completely agree with that, and that's been in my experience as well. Again, I was going to say with that specifically, it's kind of like a manifestation thing, or whatever you're thinking about, that's what you sort of become, and then that's why it's good to surround yourself with the things that you want to be doing, and then essentially, if you have that plan B, then you're giving yourself the allowance to not let this work? Why would you do that? And that makes it's kind of
Yes.
the opposite of what your parents tell you. Which
Yes.
I've had very supportive parents, but people say not to.
They worry.
Yeah, of course. Like you want to have a plan B, and the idea is if you have a plan B, you're literally planning for your plan A to fail. That's exactly what it is.
Yes.
I had so when I was working at Right Track in New York City, we had a wonderful studio manager named Barry Bon Jovi. He was tough, but he knew what he was doing, and he ran the studio incredibly well. And we had a bad run of just a couple of weeks where things weren't going well. Sessions were having issues, and morale was low, let's say. So
Sure.
Barry called a studio, like an all staff meeting, and I remember we gathered in the live room of Studio A, and I don't remember most of the meeting, but I remember him saying some version of this. He said, "Listen, I like all of you. I think you're great, and I want to see you succeed. But if you want to do anything more than you want to be here, you should leave. I've got a line of 100 people out the door who want any one of your jobs. And if you'd rather be with your boyfriend or girlfriend or significant other, if you'd rather be seeing your friends, if you'd rather not be here for 24 or 48 hours straight, if you'd rather not deal with the hardships that come with working your way up in the recording business, that's fine." He said, "There are way easier ways to make money than this, and you're all smart people. You'll be fine. But you need to want to be here more than you wanted to do anything else." And it's true.
That's what happened to me in the Bay Area, because I worked with a lot of bands from San Francisco and Berkeley. And I remember, like, to this day, friends just eventually stopped calling me to go do stuff. Like, "Hey, you want to go see the show?" And eventually they just stopped. And it's because I was just always busy doing what I wanted. Wasn't working with Bon Jovi, which would have been a great experience, but I had a similar one where people just like, "Yeah, well, that's all he's doing." So that was all internal, self-imposed, just keep my nose to the grind. So let's just keep making records. And that's what it takes, a single-mindedness that unfortunately is not great for relationships. Sometimes not even great for your health. You can say it's like a really weird, bad addiction, but it can be really fulfilling sometimes.
Yeah, two things about that. One, just to be clear, Barry Bon Jovi is Bongiovi, although he is the cousin of John Bon Jovi, who changed the spelling of the name for the band. The other thing is, I think Matt and I have both had conversations over the past couple of years. There's a lot of focus on work-life balance now and mental health, and all of that stuff is great. There's nothing wrong with any of it. But the question we'll get is, so how do you find work-life balance in the music business? And the answer is, you don't. It's kind of got to be an obsession.
I agree with. I think that. So I've actually had some amazing conversations as well about that sort of work ethic versus mental health and just keeping yourself sane so you can keep doing this. And I think there's a lot of merit to that, because there is a lot of. You still have to be 100% in this, and you've got to be able to put the work in, and it does demand a lot, that's for sure. But there's a safe way to do that, but at the same time, it does become an obsession, and I think that's what drives. I'm ADHD, for example. I hyperfocus everything and get lost for hours, days, or weeks into a project, and that can, because I do a lot of film stuff as well, so it's much, it's huge projects with massive sessions, and it can take a long time. Not that music can't, like, of course that is a huge one as well, but just in general, these projects end up, it requires every bit of your soul to make it work and happen. And if he doesn't have that, then the project suffers. And it's like, you need people who are totally on board with this, 100%.
Yeah,
and
I think
that's what makes them good.
I think your points are well taken. And I think that's something that Will and I had kind of jokingly talked about probably about 6 months ago, is that I'm not sure how many well-balanced emotional people are in the music business, because it's almost, in a way, first of all, you want to be passionate, you want to work really hard, but in some ways it's a great escape if you don't want to deal with your relationship, or you're not very social with friends. It's a great place to go to. You're in a room with no windows with a bunch of guys, and you're you're singular focus on one thing, and being ADHD is fantastic. So it's a nice place to be. Yeah, it's a nice place to be if you want to be coping in a way that also makes it a career. So
I
yeah.
agree. Yeah, I've found that the all the strange people tend to go to this industry, whether that's film or you said acting before,
Yep.
all those different things. You've got to be a bit quirky. You've got to be a little bit crazy to even want to try
Yes.
this, and you'd have to
Yes.
love it to be able to keep going because it's brutal. Why would you do that
Yes.
if you don't love it? So that's a huge thing.
Also, there's a real sense of being outside of the norm and of being a risk taker, because obviously any one of us could have been an accountant or something that was kind of required 9 to 5, working in an office. But all of us have decided that we're okay with flexible schedules. We're okay with starting at noon and working until 2 in the morning. We're okay with sometimes you work on a weekend. I think you have to be open to that idea. And in a weird way, you have to almost be an entrepreneur to get yourself started, build your studio or
100%.
start working. You have to be very self-motivated, which is really, I think, a fascinating thing for people who are very artistic,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think because we're saying a lot of like, and I'm doing it too. We're talking about all the reasons to not do it. The thing that I think is hard for people who aren't in the arts to understand about us is that the reason why we do it, despite all of that, is the fact that there's nothing like this
Yeah.
in any other realm. I can't get the rush I get from working on a music project or a recording project in general any other way. It's just how I'm wired. So the seesaw of what are, how good how good do I feel about doing it versus all of the hardships that come with it has always tilted towards I'd rather be doing this than not be doing it. And I'll put up with all this other stuff. But it's definitely like if you're not wired this way, that's totally fine. You're probably a healthy person, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
But we are wired this way, so we do it.
100%.
I think another thing that is the work that we're doing is something that we're passionate about. Because I was thinking, like, if the three of us were accountants, we wouldn't go home and want to work on accountants, work with our spreadsheets. Now, if we had to because of a deadline, we would do it. But those of us in the music business will go home and still work on music
Yeah.
because we're crazy, we're passionate, we're driven, whatever it is. But so it's a weird pull,
Yeah. I was gonna say as well, like you sort of stumbled on something there, Will, that was it's kind of the main point of this podcast to talk about that thing that happens when you listen to a piece of music, you watch a film, you're at a live show, and it's overwhelming, and you just go, "This is where I'm supposed to be." It's like it was written for me. I say this all the time on the podcast, but that's what the podcast is about. It's about that, and we've just perfectly uncovered like exactly what we're supposed to be talking about.
That's how I ended up here.
Me too.
I can tell you the exact moment that I knew. I can't say that I knew I was going to be on the recording side, but the moment I said I'm going to do something having to do with music for a living, and it was at Exhibition Place, a stadium in Toronto, Ontario, in August of 1991, when I went to see the very first Lollapalooza tour here in the States. I had, because I grew up in such a small town, I was very sheltered from sort of underground alternative music at the time, but I got into it just through my own devices and finding friends and whatnot, but it didn't feel like there was much of a community out there. And then all of a sudden I was in a stadium of 25,000 people all going bonkers for bands like Susie and the Banshees and Jane's Addiction and Rollins Band, all these bands that I thought I was the only one. I felt very lonely. And then boom, here's this thing. And I'm looking around going, these people, the people on stage, are clearly making a living doing this. And this is awesome. And whatever it is I'm feeling, I need to keep feeling. I need to figure out a way to be a part of this. And so that became my guiding light from that point forward. And I think at the time I was 16.
Oh, dude, I love that. That's the coolest. That's like the reason all of us like we want to do stuff. Is we find something that makes you go like, "There's the spark. That's the thing." And we're all like, it's like a drug. We're driven to get an X fix to that. Like whatever I'm doing, I'm looking for that in some form, and that's kind of bringing into the immersion of the Dolby Atmos talk, because it does that so well, right?
Oh my God. And that's And that's what Matt said earlier about us having this
Mm.
experience at our friend Brad Wood's studio. One of the reasons I think Matt and I have worked well together is Matt recognized in me when he hired me that we were simpatico about a really central thing. And Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's really central to Matt's production style. And it was central to what I thought about music, but watching him produce reinforced it in me that this was the way to go. And it's that the technology should never trump the music. It doesn't matter how many speakers you have. It doesn't matter how good you make the snare drum sound. None of that stuff matters unless there's a great song and a great artist telling the story. And
Absolutely.
and so if we can do that just as well with two speakers as we can do it with 12, there's no reason to have 12. And I
Mhm.
think that
Totally
was one
fair.
of the downfalls of 5.1 and
Mm.
7.1 is it was never compelling enough and never accessible enough to anybody to make people say, "Oh, I get why I need more than two speakers. I get why I need to have this experience." Whereas with Atmos, that the number of people we've had come through the studio and sit in the chair I'm in right now and have tears coming down their face or say, "I don't want to hear stereo anymore. How am I supposed to go back to listening to stereo
Mhm.
again?" has been incredible. And that's why we
Mm.
got on board. There was no other reason.
Completely valid reason. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we have actually had record label people have their first experience in our studio and hearing stuff, music they've heard like hundreds of times and go, "Oh my God, I'm hearing stuff on that song I've never heard before." And it is, to me, it's very compelling because of the emotional thing that seems to keep coming up. People keep saying they get a feeling from it that they don't get elsewhere. So, yeah.
That's really important to talk about, I think, because that feeling, like we were saying before, that's the thing we're chasing. I think
Mhm.
that's the reason any of this matters is
Mhm.
because that's what
Yes.
it can do for people.
Yes.
And I can liken it to sort of films because like film is my main sort of bread and butter now. But certainly coming from a music background and being a musician all my life, I've very much felt this for music too. So essentially, when you watch a film, it's kind of got all the senses. So
Mhm.
you've got the visual and the audio, as opposed
Mhm.
to music, which can just do audio, right? If you think
Right.
about that and how a visual can sort of stimulate your mind and make you think about something, then you've got the audio, which can also do that, and then you've got story and all these other dimensions to it.
Mhm.
There could be an arc in the story that takes you from one place and then evolves it and then becomes something else. That can happen in a song too.
Mhm.
And the thing is, when
Absolutely.
you do that with this technology, those things are the thing that transcend beyond just the song being a song and it being directly, I don't know how to explain this. It's straight into your heart, right?
Yeah.
That's why the people are crying and going, "Oh my God, I bypassed all the fluff and it's just straight into me." And it
Mhm.
feels like it was written and directed completely at me. I'm in the center of it, literally. And
Mhm.
it's incredible. That
Mhm.
is like amazing, right? So, like, how have you? I guess I want to talk about now how to achieve this, because that's what our aim is to try and get this to happen, right? No matter what we're working on, and it sort of doesn't matter the format either. It's more about how do you achieve that, maybe in stereo first, and what is it that you can quantify this immersion thing. And now with Atmos, it's a lot easier. But yeah, what do you reckon about that?
Mhm. Hmm. Will? Yeah, no, I have to think about
Go for
that.
it. That
I
was a
don't
long
know.
question.
Hmm.
I think the reason why every attempt by corporations to quantify what is successful in the arts has failed is that you can't quantify it, other than to say you need somebody who can write a great script, write a great song, perform a great script, perform a great song, paint a great painting.
Mhm.
Um, and at any given moment, the the audience for that is constantly shifting, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what are you going for? What is this song trying to, is it trying to be as popular as it can possibly be? Is it aiming at a specific emotion? Like all of these things shift. And sometimes if you aim at a specific emotion, it happens to be one that is widely popular at the time. It's so hard. And all we can do, I think, as producers is listen to what a songwriter and an artist are trying to do and say, I have an idea of how to translate this into the recorded medium that's going to deliver the feeling you're looking for as effectively as possible. We're kind of trying to cut the drug the right way.
I mean, it's always subjective. I mean, it's hard to tell until someone opens their mouth and they start singing, and you the hairs stand up on your arm, or they don't, or your hair sort of stand up. You go, I can see where this could go. I see what the potential is. So
Sure.
I think that's part of what all of us do is we're really kind of like emotion farmers. You know, we go and we kind of plant some things, and we see these bands come in, and we try to help them. You know, we water them, we give them some fertilizer, and then we come back, a week or two later. And I think for me, it's always been if you do it right as a producer, it's almost like I've had this happen with bands where they go, "Oh my God, we did this record, you didn't do anything." It's like, "Oh my God, I did so much behind the scenes Jedi mind shit to get you to do things." Where like with an artist, you can't just go up to the artist and go, "Hey, the song needs a bridge," because they'll be like, "Fuck you, I don't want to do that." But if you're sitting there having lunch, having some chips and eating, and you go, "Yeah, this song it could be good with a bridge, I think. What do you guys think?" Anyway, and you move on. A week later, the singer will come and go, "Hey, I wrote a bridge for this song. I had this idea." And you go, "Cool." You don't go, "Well, that was my idea," but you
Mm.
just go, "That's fantastic." And if you do it right, the band or the artist always thinks that was their idea and they made this record without you, or you were just taking a nap on the couch. But if you really do it right, people don't feel your fingertips and you're in the pie. It just happens, but you do it in such a way that it's seamless.
It's like Inception.
Yeah, yeah. You work with these artists that sometimes don't actually know where they're going. And you have to be a step ahead of someone who doesn't really know where they're going. That is insane to
Yeah.
be like a step ahead, and you're right there, and their footfall right lands there. You're like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. And I think
Because you
it
planned
takes
it.
huge
Yeah.
leaps of faith. You Will's heard me tell this analogy, but I'll share this with you, Dan. So when civilians ask me about record production, what is record production? And you basically say, well, you know what a director does in a movie? That's basically what a record producer is, basically. But let's say the three of us are on an island. It's a small island. It's got some coconut trees, and there's a bridge that goes off into the mist. And I go to you guys. I go, "Come on, Dan. Come on, Will. Let's go across this bridge. I think there's something better over there." And you guys are like, "What's the problem? We got a nice beach. We got these coconut trees. Everything's cool." I go, "I don't know, man. I think there's something better up there." So I convince you guys. It's a rope bridge, and we start going across. And there's a big chasm, and there's water down below. And all of a sudden, the wind starts coming up, and the bridge is moving. You guys are like, "Hey, man, let's just go back. This is sucking. What's so good over there that we want to risk our lives?" And I'm like, "Come on, man, trust me, you guys." And we're up there, and all of a sudden, pieces of the bridge are falling out. And you have to step over this huge gap that you could fall down to your death. And we finally come out to this clearing, and there's papaya trees, and there's mango, and there's all this stuff, and it's a bigger, more beautiful place and everything. And you guys are like, "Well, yeah, this is great. Like, why didn't you tell us it looked like this?" And I would say, I didn't know what this looked like, but I knew where we were at wasn't good enough. And that's what a producer does. You take people by the hand, and with bands, sometimes your songs are like in pieces. When everyone goes, "Good night, we'll see you tomorrow," and you're like, and you go to bed at night, you lay there like, "What am I going to do? This song is in pieces. And I got to show up tomorrow and pretend like I know what I'm talking about." It's all gut instinct with some experience. You kind of go, "Come on, guys, we're going to go this way," and you go there, and it works. Anyway, that's a.
I watched Matt. It's one of the most instructive and amazing things I've ever seen in a recording studio. We're working with this band called O.A.R. And they'd had some like they were very successful playing live. They'd had a couple of minor, is that right to
Yeah,
classify them as minor
yeah,
radio
yeah,
hits?
yeah.
They'd done okay, but they'd never really broken through in a big way. And so I think this was maybe the third or fourth record Matt and I worked on together. And
Okay.
Matt heard something in one of the songs that they brought in and said, essentially the island speech he just gave, and said, "Listen, I don't know what it's gonna be, but I think there's something better in here. Let's just keep working at it until we see. We'll know one way or the other. Either we'll find the better thing or there isn't a better thing there." And for, I want to say 2 weeks, every day we had a little, they had a Pro Tools rig that they would take on the road with them and they brought it to the studio. So they had a little vocal rig set up. And every day for some period of time, either the lead singer would be in there trying out different chorus ideas or Matt would be in there trying out different chorus ideas. And the rest of the band, my memory is the rest of the band were getting a little antsy with this. They were like, the song was good the way it was. Why do we keep going trying to rehash this? Because what they're hearing coming out of the other room a lot of times are they're bad ideas, right? They're just trying stuff out to see what works. But one night the lead singer sang what would become the chorus of the song, and I shook my head and they were like, oh, it's just so cheesy, what are they doing? And it's the only time I thought to say something like this, and I don't know whether it was appropriate at the time or not, but I said, guys, I get it. I understand. I like the song the way it was too. But if that ends up being the chorus, you guys are all going to be wearing golden underwear because that's a hit song. And that song went from being what was going to be a deep album cut to being the second single released and got them tons of placements in all sorts of commercials across the US.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was a song that was called Vancouver Jam that Richie, the guitar player, had written, and it was a fine enough song. It was fine, but I just kept saying, I think it'd be better. And I got to a point after a couple of weeks. I said, listen, I want a song that is anthemic that people are going to play at sporting events like football, baseball, whatever it is. I want them, and I want everyone to sing along. I want it to be like this thing where everyone sings along, and that's what they did. They wrote the song called "This Town," and I know the impact because I did some co-writing, but I got like 10%, nothing really that amazing. But I knew that it got to a point where I kept getting these emails and phone calls. Can we use it on ESPN? Can we use it for this show here? Can we use it in this commercial there? And I finally got to a point where I just told my manager, yes, whatever the band wants, my vote is always going to be yes. And it just became so. Anyway, it was one of those things where I really had an idea, and that was that feeling of the band looking at me as we leave at like 10, 11 o'clock at night. They're looking at me like, dude, what the fuck? The song, it's not the good old song, and it's not the better version. And so the one thing I said is that, look, we can always go back to what you had. We know what that sounds like. But I want to feel for you to break things, take it apart so it falls apart till we reassemble it. If it's better, great. If not, we go back to the other one. But I remember sweating every night, just laying in bed like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I had no idea, but I just kept going with gut instinct and just like, and fortunately, as a producer, I was very lucky to have someone like Will who could still steer the ship. This is really important. I could be a genius or look like a genius because I could focus on the salient details on the songwriting because I knew Will had it locked down in terms of getting the recording done. Because if I didn't have that, I'd be like, oh shit, how are we getting? But I knew Will and I were like locked in. We knew it was laser focused. I trusted like, yeah, whatever Will says is good with me, and I could really push for that. And I don't think you can underestimate a really, really good partnership to pull off good
Yeah.
music. And that's actually what happened with us in Atmos, because we know this, that Will and I will say between the two of us is this third entity who's an excellent Atmos mixer. Will is fantastic at detail. He's got way more patience than I do. He will do all the deep dives, and I just don't. I've got ADHD or something. I'm like, I can't do it. I mix with my elbows, but I can sometimes come in and inject some because I'm not looking at the minutia. I could just make some energy happen. And between the two of us, we find it because we both bring something really essential to the table. And what's really interesting is that Will is actually has learned to kind of do my job, and sadly, I haven't really learned how to do his jobs as well. But he's really picked up on it because there was something really great intrinsic between the two of us. And again, it's a partnership, 50-50, that has been really exceptional in making great Atmos mixing because we both are super passionate about it. We're definitely not making piles of money doing it because we put way too much time and energy into it. But partnership, I think, is really important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. That's so cool. I think, yeah. I mean, I've had similar partnerships before, but that one sounds really, really powerful. Like it sounds that third party thing you're talking about, where it's sort of you have one ingredient, you have another ingredient, and then together they make something completely new that you could not possibly have done before,
Yeah.
and that's a really special
Yeah.
thing.
And I think that a really important part of it, and it was something I watched various producers and engineers when I was coming up in the business kind of fall back on in different ways, but I believe deeply in it, is if there are two people in the room and we have a disagreement about whether or not what we're doing is the right thing for the mix or the song or whatever, well, we can have a conversation about it, but we will know we have it when both of us go, oh yeah, that's it.
That's right.
Right. And that's
Mhm.
the push and pull. I think that's just so important because it's so easy to get your ego. In my case, it's as the detail guy, I will go down the kind of rabbit holes you're talking about, Dan, where I'll get so wrapped up in the technical details of what I'm trying to achieve that I will lose the forest for the trees. And because a thing was hard to do or it took me a long time to do, I will assign too much value to it.
I
And
understand
then
that.
Matt can walk into the room and go, I'm really sorry, Will. That may have taken you a long time, but it's not working for the mix. And I can trust that when he says that, he's right. And
Yeah.
I need to go back and we need to retool this.
Well, it's like the fresh perspective.
Yeah, and we both do that now too, because I'll do that sometimes too, where I get into detail and I'm going off on the deep end, and sometimes it's successful, and sometimes Will's like, "I see what you're trying to do. It's definitely a good idea, but let's see if we can pull it back a little bit or refocus it." So again, collaborations is super,
Yeah.
super, super important. I think if you can, manage it, it's really good.
Yeah, and I think, well, I guess what the other thing is when you've got one person who's sort of keeping you one foot on earth, and then the other person is allowed to soar. That's where you find the magic, and you kind of it's like a balance.
Yeah.
Might be different depending on the situation, which person is doing which role there. But like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a really cool way to do it. I've found that works as well in my own little experience. I was going to ask a little bit more about the Atmos stuff. So, like, I'm going to get a little bit nerdy now.
Well,
So
What else are we here for?
good, yeah, awesome. So with your rig there, I just wanted to see exactly what you're using to do this stuff. Are those Cali speakers?
Yep. So we
Allie,
have
woohoo!
yeah, we're big fans. I
Love that.
believe, though I'm not, I would have to call our friend Nate at Kelly to ask for sure. But other than the Atmos system they built in their office here in Burbank, California, I believe we were the first commercial all Cali Atmos studio in the world.
That's pretty
Um,
cool.
we started off as a 7.1.4 system. We're now 9.2.4. We run an Antelope Galaxy 32 interface that handles all of our monitoring and all of our B chain, all the speaker EQ and delay, of which EQ there's some, delay there's almost none.
Cool.
It's
So
all
perfectly equidistant.
because it's an equidistant setup. We had
Yep.
the space in here. It's a fairly big room. And we just decided, because it was such early days, there were, I think, less
Hmm.
than 20, maybe less than 15 music focused Atmos studios in the world at that point. And
Yeah.
two
Right.
of those were Capitol Studio C here in Los Angeles and Abbey Road, which Universal Music built specifically because they were going to make a huge push on the Atmos side. There was nobody to ask about this. So when it came time to say, okay, how are we going to do this? My thinking, and I, Matt and I think very similarly in this way, was, okay, we don't know anything about this. Dolby knows a lot more about it than we do. They've been doing it for film and TV for, at that point, it had been 11 or 12 years.
Right.
So how about let's read all of their recommendations about how to lay out a room and build a room. And the thing I thought was, I understand that speaker EQ and speaker delay are really powerful tools, but they are never going to overcome physics. So, wouldn't it make sense to lean on those as little as possible, to let them be problem solvers rather than design a system that's going to rely on them, where we've got rear speakers that are much further away and side speakers that are too close and all this. So, I basically went in and went, okay, what do we do? And said, okay, if you do an equidistant setup, it's a circle. And here's the minimum distance you have to be the diameter of the circle. And that's exactly what we did.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's those two sort of schools of thought there. What one tends to be the theatrical sort of orthogonal setup, which I'm actually equidistant in here even for post, which is not generally done. Like, but I mean, for a home studio, it's fine. I do a lot of pre-mixing and stuff like that in here. And I'm running 914 as well. But yeah, so I think with that sort of mindset of choosing to go down like as close as you can to physics, allowing that to be how you make your decisions, and then just using those things as, if you can't get closer, like then you have those tools. That's a good way to do it, obviously.
So here's a really important distinction between the music side and the post side that would make you possibly shift from the orthogonal to the equidistant setup, depending. And it's that when you're doing post, your main focus in your mix is about what is this going to sound like
in a theater,
really in a theater or in a home theater setup.
100%.
What you're not thinking about is how is this going to sound on headphones, because what people are going to be hearing on headphones is a stereo fold down.
Correct.
Right? There's no relationship in post between what's happening in the Atmos mix and what's happening in headphones other than the fold down process. For us, there is a direct relationship between those two things because we're delivering binaural files that are based on what we're doing in the Atmos mix. And that kind of faux reality that's being created by the binaural fold down is directly related to, it's not related to an orthogonal setup. It's related to an equidistant setup.
It has to be. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So there's pluses and minuses to both. It just kind of depends on what your needs are.
Totally. I just went for this one because my room's not big enough to go more than that. Two, most of the stuff, if I'm mixing for theater, I'm going to be going to a theater to mix. So it's, you know what I mean? Like I sort of went with, this is what I can do here. That's okay.
Yeah.
And it got me going, so like 914 is still pretty good for a bedroom. You know what I mean? Like this is
fantastic.
So like in general, but I've noticed, so the 9, like the two above 714, which is the minimum standard everyone talks about, and a lot of people still have 714 as the base. That is beautiful and great. I want to know what you guys think between having 7 and going to 9 and how much that matters.
You can start this, Matt.
Please.
That's a good question. I mean, when we first built our system, we were trying to keep we had a very limited budget, and so we went with 7. But anyway, early on, I was pushing for 9 just mainly because I was such a remedial mixer, and it was hard for me to imagine the sounds between the right speaker and the right side speaker. And so for me, and I think I wasn't mixing as well with that, because when I would go to headphones, it was always kind of funky. And I think one of the things I learned from Will and from experience is that the cardinal points really translated a headphone much better. And for me, having that 9, the wides available was much better for my mixing. So anyway, that's what I did. And it was kind of helpful for us. We had to do this mix of the Stain record. And we tried, whether it had the guitars on the left, right, or the wides. And then we went and listened in an Atmos car. And it was really essential for us to kind of hear if we could actually pull it off. So that's my thought. Will, you got more detail on that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so the flip side of that was I, for a long time, was pushing to not do the 9. And my thinking was not that I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but essentially what Apple Music is delivering that's being encoded for binaural on devices is a 714 feed. And so if we were staying as true as we could to what most people were hearing, we should be mixing in 714 to best have that translate. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. When we added the 2 wide speakers, I found that when I put on the headphones, this was the most immediate thing on it. Obviously, the extra 2 speakers are really nice. They reduce the distance, because that's a big gap between the front speakers and the side speakers, right? And things get weird and phasey in there. But crucially, they do not in the headphones. Headphones are agnostic to the distance between speakers. If the fold down doesn't care.
Bypass it. Yeah.
So having a set of speakers that reduce that distance made a big difference to how our room sounded, which was it was much cooler to listen to. But when I put on the headphones, all of a sudden, I was finding that what I was hearing in the speakers bore a much better resemblance to what I was hearing in the headphones, and that was massive because
Yeah.
it's a huge it's more than 90% of our listeners are probably experiencing what we're doing on headphones. So we need to, despite the fact that we're in this weird space right now where what we do on the speakers has to kind of be king in terms of we don't want to take huge swings to make the headphones sound better and then have the speakers sound much worse, because
Yeah.
ultimately the headphone sound is developing over time to try and be more like the speakers. At the same time, we have to be cognizant of the fact that a record that comes out today, it matters more to them how it sounds today than how it's going to sound 5 years from now. So
Sure.
Mhm.
it's this crazy balancing act we're always trying to do. And the
Yeah.
wides made it much, much easier.
That's interesting. So when you found that you had the wides now, are you panning things wider? Is that how that sort of eventuated to make
I
sense of that? Or
I don't know, Matt, you can talk about what your gut tells you. I always use the wide position because I was aware of it. Um,
right.
so I don't feel like we're trying to the things that have to live in the front wall. I feel like still have to live in the front wall. We
Sure.
didn't suddenly find that, oh, well, now we can pan a drum kit out wider than we did before. No, it doesn't
No.
work.
No, I agree. Yeah.
It's just that when we put something in the wide position, or even in between the wides and the side speakers, we're less surprised by what it sounds like when we put on the headphones and less confused about what we have to do in order to get it to translate.
That makes sense. So it's just basically uncovering that position that now you can see what it's doing. It's
Yeah.
like room calibration or something like that, where you have it feels like you've got a blanket over your speaker, and then it's all of a sudden in cal, and you go, oh, now I can hear accurately,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
it makes a big difference. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Because to me, it was always kind of a guessing game with not having that the wide speakers there. You're like imagining it's like, yeah, I guess that's kind of what it sounds like. So having the speaker those was very nice. It was a nice improvement for us.
And how about the two subs? So the obviously that's one LFE feed. Are you using? Is this like a room cancellation mode thing, or
Mhm.
is it two stereo? Are you talking actually point two?
Oh my goodness. I'll
Neither.
start, Will. I'll start, Will,
Okay.
and you can dive in. So when we
Yeah.
first were getting calibrated, this guy, Brian Pennington, came out to tune for us. He's an exceptional tuner from Dolby. And so we had one Cali subwoofer, and he comes in there and he's like, do you guys happen to have another subwoofer? And we did happen to have one floating around. So we actually ended up using it. So one of them, of course, is LFE and one
Yeah.
is bass management.
Okay.
And we kind
Right.
of, and Will can correct me on this, but we started that we had two of them. And then we actually went to using two speakers doing the same job. And I think now, aren't we doing that where one's
We
LFE, one's bass
separated them.
management? Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. The progression was Brian came out to tune. We were using a different monitoring system at the time for budget reasons. We started off using Matt's existing Pro Tools rig with all of the same interfaces, but feeding
Right.
what do we get? A JBL Intonato
Yeah.
monitoring system.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
the Intonato didn't have enough bass management and LFE headroom to have a single speaker do the work in a room the size of the one we have. It's a fairly large room.
Fair enough.
So he immediately said, we're going to need a second one. And then we scrounged up. We had a couple, but they weren't the best quality subwoofers.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
scrounged one up and made it work. But we knew from that point, we're like, crap, now we're going to have to buy a second subwoofer, which we did. And when we put that one in, he came back and retuned the room a second time. And then we switched over to the Antelope Galaxy. And at that point, the way the Galaxy operated, it could only do simultaneous, like one feed for both bass management and LFE. So we had to feed, we still needed two subwoofers for the size of the space, but we could only do both subs doing the same job. We always felt like that wasn't as good as what we'd had before.
Yep.
And when Antelope updated their software so that they updated their software and we still had to figure out a workaround, but we figured
Right.
out how to separate the LFE and the bass management. So we had Brian come back a fourth time
Oh wow.
and set up the room again with the separate LFE and bass management sub, and he retuned for that, and that's been fantastic.
Okay. All right. So you found the way that fourth time's the time, I guess.
It's
awesome.
been a lot.
No,
We've
well, I mean,
learned
that's
a
what it
lot.
takes. That's what it takes. Like everyone I talk to about this stuff, it's always ongoing, and as the technology
Yes.
improves as well, like it's a constant moving target. So even just like, for example, the Apollo 16 that now does Atmos support, cool, and they're continuing to roll this out, which is amazing. So like, sort of doesn't really matter what you have anymore. It's just even all the doors are now integrated. You know, most of them.
It's really interesting because I get asked a lot about, I've got a friend asking me right now about what should I, if I want to be ready for Atmos, if I wanted to make the leap, what should I buy in terms of an interface? And the assumption now is that everybody's interface can do it. And I'm like,
No.
and I know
Nope.
this because I made this mistake in the beginning of, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I said, you think that if it says it has Atmos support, that means it'll do everything you need it to do. No.
It just means
It
up to
might
16 channels.
It might do some of what you need it to do, but not all of it. And you might need another piece of gear to fill in those gaps, or you can pay the extra money for one of the ones that does everything.
So, for example, the Apollo doesn't do the Kel stuff.
Yes, it doesn't do the room tuning.
Yeah.
So you can do monitoring. You can feed all the speakers and you can monitor from all the speakers, but you're going to need to put something else in between that can handle the EQ and speaker delay. Same thing with Focusrite stuff, which was, I thought, going to be the direction we went in the beginning. I thought we were going to end up with the Focusrite stuff. And I was like, I can't figure out a way around the fact that it can't do the room tuning. That isn't more expensive than spending the money we don't want to spend on one of these other things that can do all of it.
Yeah, totally. I think that's the huge leap there, because obviously it's quite more expensive, you know, to get into those interfaces that do come with it. Then you're talking FTRX and stuff like that, and they're amazing and they work so cool, like perfect. But the Dadman software is very intuitive. Is a bit to learn. A bit of a
I would
learning curve.
disagree.
But I feel like it makes sense to me now, you know, now that I've used it a bit.
Everybody I know who has put a significant amount of time into learning it has said once I got over the hump of how over-engineered it is and figured out how it did the stuff I needed to do, now I'm fine. But we know more people whose studios were set up with Dadman, who, if something goes wrong, they're screwed. They got to call somebody to come and sort it out. So
perhaps I meant a different word then.
It works great.
It does.
It's great. It does what it does incredibly well. It's just too complicated.
Yeah, that's a fair call. I'm starting to make sense of it now that I've played with it, but that's a good point. What I was going to say before, I've been using, so I have got some of the Focusrite stuff, and what I did to get around some of that, because it was a pretty big, you know, issue in a home studio, I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to do a speed chain, and the speed chain can't exist in a second device. I just don't have the money right now. Right. So I found that the external renderer, when they integrated that mastering side instead of the production suite, that was a huge leap. And I was like, okay, cool. Now I can do my beat chain through the renderer. And that kind of worked for a while. And now I'm sort of going, there's heaps of ways to do that. But that was what worked for me for a while.
Yeah, I think it's been amongst the folks that we know. And, you know, it's a lot of people doing a lot of high level work that we're lucky enough to call friends. Most of them have worked as hard as they could to not have to do that. It is a reasonable solution if you're on a budget. Yes, it will do those things, and it will do them at a level that will get you much closer than you want to be. And certainly you shouldn't go without it. But, you know, like the Antelope Galaxy and even the Intonato both have, you know, 16 band EQs per channel. And they're not graphic. It's all parametric. And so it's fully customizable. And the tuning job you can do with that is superior to what you can do in the render. So it's not to say don't use the render. Absolutely. If that's what you have available, like you did, you should absolutely use it. If you have the budget and you have the means to step up to using something like the Matrix or the Antelope, or what I think Apogee will do it now. You will find that you can improve your situation.
100%. Yeah. And even, there's like the Audient Aria. Have you played around with that one at
Yes.
all? That's another really good budget one.
We did a recording at East West Studios in January. It was an Atmos recording. We were using nothing, almost nothing, but an 11 microphone Atmos array to record a 4-piece kind of
Beautiful.
folk pop ensemble for a demo around NAMM. And we had Cali come in. They graciously came in and set up a 714 system in the Studio A control room. So we could monitor in 714 while we were recording, and they used an Auria for that.
That's cool. I've only actually ever heard of one person other than you guys doing something like that. But Justin Gray was talking about it when he was on the episode as well.
Yeah.
And very, very similar thing, building his album up and then monitoring it in Atmos. Just direct, no renderer, but like, very, very cool way to do it. So I want to explore this now because I don't really do a lot of recording. It's mainly post, it's mainly mixing, but I think that would be very cool. So I would like to explore it.
Yeah, if you can just route to a 714 master bus and then send that to the proper outputs to get to the proper speakers, you're home. And in Pro Tools, at least, I don't know, I don't know if Logic can do this. I can't see why it wouldn't be able to, but I don't know it well enough. You can use the surround panner live while you're tracking and just have everything go to the proper speakers.
Right. It really is that simple then, I suppose. Yeah. It's just, you build it in while you're doing it, which is amazing.
Whether you're talking either stereo or Atmos, you're talking about whether you bake in the sound from the beginning. Okay, I'm an old guy, so I come from I used to do records on 8 tracks, so we had drums on 2 tracks, including all the compression, reverb, EQ, everything. So for me, here's the failings I find with DAWs like Pro Tools and Logic. The biggest issue is that all it does is allow you to postpone decisions. So you can have a DI guitar tone, and maybe we'll change in the future, and maybe we'll change our keyboard thing. And I just don't think that's a good way to make records. I think that what you have to do is go in there with an idea of where you want to go. So when you are recording, you run your guitar through an amplifier and say one side of the guitar is a Les Paul, it's kind of round and woolly. The other side, you've got a Telecaster through a Fender amp. So then when you play your solo, it's going to be on top of the Gibson because it's kind of woolly. And you have some sonic space for a guitar to poke out on top of that. Same thing with keyboards. I think you have to make decisions. What made mixing in 8-track so easy is that the decisions were made. Yeah. You could balance the drums, the bass, all this stuff, and it was relatively simple. Both Will and I have gotten this thing where you get someone wants you to mix something, you get 140 tracks, and there's like 3 microphones on this guitar amp. There's a 57 and a 414 and a 421, and you got this and then they go and make those decisions, and then they go, here's a DI guitar that we put a plug in, but you can change that sound if you want. It's like, first of all, I'm not producing this thing. You're supposed to have an idea of what your intentions are, because the intentions are what is the through line from beginning to end, and what you're trying to do. Is it going to be a sawtoothy, aggro, distorted kind of sound? Is it going to be really warm and mellow and kind of tube-like? And so I hate it when people don't make those decisions. I'll mix it anyway. I get paid to mix it. But I think that you need a real defined sense of what you're trying to accomplish. And everything you do is going to support that. Every vocal, every guitar part, everything is supporting this vision. And postponing ideas makes for very long, complicated mixing, because similar to the thing we talked about before, look, if you have a plan B on every single instrument you've recorded, you're never going to get anywhere. And I've seen mixes stretch out for a long time because you're making these plan B decisions as opposed to, shit, that guitar's bright, that Fender, we'll do what we can with it, but that's already baked in. So there is no plan B for that. Now, how do we build around that? And I think plan Bs are bad ideas. I think you got to commit. I think you have to be very boldly go into directions and have a real aesthetic you're going for. It's because you're trying to create a feeling and an emotion for the listener. And if you don't know what that is from the get-go, then that's where you're going to make decisions like, well, we can change this plugin later. It's like, no.
That's a good point.
Yeah, does it support the feeling right now? Is this a happy song? Is it a sad song? Is it an aggressive song? Is it not? And everything has to serve this idea. So anyway,
It's perfect. Like, it's a really, really good answer. I
but
was kind of coming from a
yeah,
post-production workflow where I kind of want the options. I kind of want the, you know, what I mean, in post-production, particularly for, say, dialogue. I'm going to say, get a boom and a lav. Definitely do not give me one or the other. Don't bake it in. Or the sound, give me options as much as possible because I know things are going to go wrong. 100%. That's like
We
a
don't
totally
have to
different
worry
workflow.
about that.
It's all right.
yeah,
So they're totally different things, but it's
yeah,
just a
yeah.
different way of thinking, you know?
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm
it is
thinking,
No,
because yeah,
if
go
we
ahead,
were
Will.
talking about a live recording, where if this was happening on stage and there was a mobile truck there
yeah,
recording it for a live album, now backups are important. Options are important
okay,
because there is a technical reason for them. In the
yeah,
studio, we have full control. If the thing didn't work, well, we're going to stop recording and we're going to fix the thing and then we're going
yes,
to record it. It's never going to get to the mixing point if we all know what we're doing. It's never going to get to the point of mixing where there's a technical problem with the track. It's
yeah,
the track is what it is. And if you need to have four different versions of the same thing and let somebody else choose which one of those to use or what combination of them to use, you don't know what you're trying to say with that track.
that's a good
Yeah,
point.
I think it comes down to,
Yeah,
what is this technology serving? If you're talking about a visual thing, if your
mm,
recording is serving a visual, then you're going to approach your sonics very differently because we're serving the visual. So yeah, maybe we don't want the voice to be distorted. Maybe we want multiple boom mics and lav mics and everything else because you're serving the visual. But when you're
yeah,
serving a song and you're serving an aesthetic and a performance, it's already there. It's already happening. So you serve it. Why don't you just serve it now instead of postponing those decisions until later? Yeah, you have to with post production. You have to. That's essential. That's
well,
why
that's what I wanted to get
you
to. Yeah,
And the
essentially, that's good.
visual, you're dealing with a situation where the visual could change on you, and therefore you now need to deliver something that sounds different.
Yeah,
And so you need to have those tools at your disposal. It's a necessity.
yeah,
Whereas
totally.
we don't have to serve the visual.
That's a good point.
yeah.
Yeah. So it really comes down to intention, essentially. What are you doing? Yeah. At least you should know.
You don't when you're recording for post, you don't know the intention until the editor, whether they have a close up or a long shot, then you're gonna pick whichever mic is for that. So you're actually
Sure.
serving the editor and the director. When you're making music, you're just serving the stereo speakers or the
Right
Atmos
now.
speakers or the earbuds. Just get that emotion out there. It's pretty defined. Let's get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of
Hmm.
sense. I think I suppose the way to maybe overarch that in terms of explaining it in a single way might be that a song is for the immediate capture of this moment, and we're going to capture that and keep it in a little box, and then you can revisit this moment. But a
Yeah.
film is crafted later. We're just getting ingredients, and then when you make the cake when you get home. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
and,
kind of
and also a song is going to be anywhere from 2.5 to like 8 minutes. You're talking about a movie that can be 2.5 hours. So you're going to have a lot of microphones, a lot
that's a
of
good point.
different perspectives. But this song it's basically a 30-second chunk of what your movie is. It's just like this little chunk. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
if
mean,
you're
go ahead.
go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say, I mean, Will's heard me talk about this, and my belief, and I'm an old guy, so I can say this kind of crap. The apex of recording was 24 track. And because 24 track, I mean, analog, digital, whatever, 24 track, because I'm going to say 24 track analog because you couldn't have different pages of each track and what's behind track one. The limitation made you absolutely firm up what your intentions were. So as you recorded, like that's what you had. If you had one more instrument to add, they want to add like a tambourine, and you're Philip. You go, what do you want to erase because we have no more room? And with Faith No More and even Maroon 5, we had like one of each. We had one drum kit, especially Faith No More. We had like literally one bass, literally one Gibson Flying V, literally one Marshall half stack. Maroon 5, we had a couple more options, but they were both low budget records. We couldn't go, let's try amp number 27 with guitar number 22. It was like,
Yeah.
no, this is what we have. Now make the record. And I think that's the very best way to make a record. You have to be on such heightened, you have to have your antenna out. and you have to be so paying attention because you have like a one shot time to get it right, as opposed to fixing it in the mix, or
Yeah.
reprogramming or reamping or whatever it is. You got to get it right. Anyway, I'll get off my
I have
soapbox.
I have three thoughts that all agree entirely with Matt.
Hit us. Let's
Number
do it.
one, and I'm not gonna name names, but around the time Matt and I started working together, there was a very well-known band making a record across the parking lot at Sound City. And they had a lot of money and a lot of gear. And one day the assistant came over. I got to know the staff over there, and the assistant came over and said, You should come over. Like the band weren't there. They'd gone home. And he's like, You should come over and take a look at this. Now, the Sound City, it's Studio A, which is a pretty big, it's like a small gymnasium-sized room. And there's a set of double doors you go through to get into it. And I walked in, and I could not believe what I was looking at. On the right-hand side of me were a line of combo amps, all mic'd up, going the length of the room. On the left-hand side, there was a line of half stacks going the length of the room, mic'd up. And behind that was a line of full stacks, each with two heads on it, going
Yes.
the length of the room. I stopped counting when I got to 72 amplifiers. And when that record came out, it sounded so bad that the mastering engineer took out an ad to say it's not my fault. So you cannot tell me that options are the difference between a good record and a bad record. I've never seen something so insane in my life. So that's the first thing.
Wow. Mind blown already.
Second thing, one of the, and again, I'm leaving the names out. We were asked to do an Atmos mix of a classic song. And the producer, I will say the name because he's amazing. The producer of the song was a gentleman named Terry Date. Now, Terry Date was a hero of mine when I was coming up in the business. And so you have this, we'd get the multi-tracks, and you have this, should I not meet my heroes moment? Like, what happens even if the song sounds great in stereo, if you pull up the tracks knowing that he engineered it and the tracks don't sound good, and you're like, oh, man. Well, I put all the faders at 0, and the song was immediately like 75 to 80% mixed. And I'm like, that guy and that band knew exactly what they wanted, and it was already on. Like, that's what mixing kind of used to be. It wasn't, you get this gaggle of mismatched tracks that you may or may not use, and maybe mute that, but maybe you want this. And then you spend a day or 2 days just trying to sort through all of that to get the tracks focused to the place where you can start mixing. No, you got it in that shape to begin with, and you could mix it in half a day or a day.
That's
because awesome. The people that came before you in the production line had a vision for it. And the third thing is I'm working on a mix, or I just finished a mix now, that is the opposite of that, where I'm doing I am on day, it took me 3-4 days to sort through everything that they gave me to get it to the point where I felt like I could mix it. And the song is never, the end result is never going to be better because of that. It's always going to be better when decisions are being made by the artist and by the production team at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Everything you're talking about, to me, comes down to this phrase that I was thinking as you're talking. 3 simple words: paralyzed by choices.
Exactly right.
I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
It's like you just get so like, what if we try this one? And the problem is that you can never just kind of go, that's great. It's like, but we have 2 more amps. Oh, okay, let's try those 2. Okay, let's try another one. It's like, dude, what do we got? Plug it in. Let's go. Anyway.
Yeah,
100%. We have a friend who's a producer, mixer, engineer, and I was talking to him recently about working on a mix where I'd been sent a whole bunch of guitar tracks for this, and every one of them had been recorded with 2 microphones, and they never summed them together. So I have no idea what the point of having these 2 microphones was, because they didn't There was no relationship. It's just the faders are both at the same level. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? And one of the microphones is the microphone I don't particularly like on guitars. And I said to him, so you know what's about to happen? And it turned out he doesn't like that kind of microphone on guitars either. He's like, you're going to mute them all. I'm like, I'm absolutely going to mute them all. I'm just going to use the microphone I like. So what? This was a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah, totally. No, that makes a lot of sense. I suppose if you know what you're trying to do, then you can aim for it. But it's like
Yes.
anything in life, right? And this come back to my the plan B thing that we were talking about before.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you did say that before, but I can liken it to a specific experience where I fell off a sort of thing I was doing, and it was because I had too many things that could become, and it was actually overwhelming. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to explore any of them now because it's actually overwhelming. I just want to have a path that I can follow. And for that particular context, I just ended up with the simplest thing, not the craziest. It makes a lot of sense. And I think, if you have intention, you can just do that, and then you've got it from the start. Good point.
That does put a lot of pressure on mixers when you give so many
Yes.
options. Then the mixer, for me, you get out of creative musical mode and you're in organizational mode. Like, what about this with that? And it's better if you just get just the right amount of information. You go, oh, I know what to do with this. You put it together, sounds great. There you go. But when it's like, because then you start feeling bad. Well, they spent all this time recording the guitar track. Should I really want to mute it? But it looks like, they worked on it, so we should include it. It's like, So just like, I think subtractive mixing. Yeah, go ahead.
That's very real. It's in the same way I was talking about how I'll get paralyzed by the fact that I did a whole bunch of work on this little thing and then Matt will walk into the room and go, I'm sorry, but it's not right. It happens to us as mixers when we get all of these tracks dumped on us and we know we can't make them all work. There's a guilt of, do they want to hear all this? And I think crucially, a piece of the production puzzle that has been removed, because for the most part, tracking engineers have been removed from the situation, is rough mixes. I watched Matt, and Matt's not the only one. Every producer I ever knew did very good rough mixes, because what they knew was, you can't know whether or not the recording is finished until you kind of hear what it's going to sound like in the end. And the difference between the rough mixes and the final mixes might be taste decisions, but they aren't, they muted out of the 150 tracks, they muted 100 of them, right? Because now you're living in, when you do a good rough mix and everybody hears it in the room or everybody takes it home with them at night, the artist comes back with an understanding of where it's at and what, and has a feeling about, do we need more? Do we need less? And you're making this common decision. What's happening now is all of the stuff is being recorded. Then it's being pushed out to a mix engineer who is now stuck with the hard work of making choices. Only nobody's involved except the mix engineer, and it's not what the mix engineer is paid to do, right? Yeah. So now people have this vision because they've recorded this bazillion things. They have this vision of what they think it can sound like, but no understanding of the reality that you can't possibly hear everything you're hearing in your brain coming out of, in the case of stereo, out of two speakers. Something's got to go. And then they're disappointed that the thing they get back doesn't sound like the thing that was in their head, which was probably never realistic to begin with.
Yeah, totally. And you stumbled on something there as well, that it was, when you have the end vision in mind, that's actually necessary to even find what to do first. So you can't start. Okay, I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent. People talk about starting small and then growing and then sometimes that's not practical. Sometimes you have to go big because your minimum thing that actually is gonna be practical and work is just bigger than that. So, for example, you have to start with a vision in mind and know, well, this is what I'm trying to do, and then I can push towards that, and then you work out, I actually have to start at the middle, because if I start at the bottom, I never get enough momentum to get to the middle to then get to the thing. And you only know that if you know where you're going. So it's like with this, I suppose having the mixer completely separate, it's like saying, oh, you just figure out where you start. And it's like, well, I don't know. I wasn't part of that vision, so I
Right.
can't possibly know where I'm going. It's like getting into taxi without a destination. So it's like, where is that vision? And then, yeah, they can't possibly make it sound like what you thought of because they don't know what you thought of.
Yeah.
Well, and we're often not given. I mean, and it's not for none of this is like nobody has bad intentions in any of
Sure.
this. It's just that it ends up being frustrating for everybody involved, right? It's not, we're not trying to make a mix that's going to not meet the expectation of the artist. It's the opposite. We're trying like
Yeah.
hell to make sure that what we do makes the artist happy. And the flip side of that is the artist has fear about the thing coming back not being what they want it to be. There's just too big a separation between we finished recording it and now we want you to mix it in terms of understanding what that process looks like to
Yes.
allow an artist to have the right sort of vision of expectations. I think if I explain that well, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that sounds right. I feel like there's some advice here that I would love to just get out of both of you, maybe, on exactly how to correct that and what's the right way to think about this for people listening, to try and avoid that issue because that is happening a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, as a producer, and also as an engineer, you can help kind of shepherd people along the way and help them, give them some guardrails. But if you're the mixer, you're just kind of stuck. Um, and the problem is that sometimes, in an ideal world, the band producer and the engineer would trust the mixer to take this big mess and put it into something that's understandable and with some focus. The problem is that sometimes when bands really need that, they second guess the mixer. So the mixer goes, okay, here's what it is. And they're like, but what about this other thing you missed? And what about that? And can you put this in? And so that's the problem is that like Will said before, they want to hear everything they've recorded. And for me, I always tell people, look, we're going to record everything you want to record. But if I'm mixing it, we're going to do subtractive mixing. Just because we recorded it doesn't mean you're going to hear it. And this is what when they argue, I say, okay, here's the scoop. You've got a human body, and it's got a gangrene on the arm, and if you don't take the gangrene off, the body's going to die. So that's like these tracks. You got too many tracks. We can put that gangrenous extra track in there, but then the whole mix collapses. So if you want the mix to live, you're gonna have to cut some things out. That it's gonna be painful. It's really painful. It's always a fight. Like what but that's essential, and I think that's really important to have somebody who is the arbiter of this is just enough information, and all that other shit is not needed. And I remember that's
Yeah.
when I worked with Chris Ordalgi a number of times. He's kind of New Jersey like, and he kind of just does. He's very outspoken, and he's very reluctant to take in much input. Like if you want to make more than a few comments, he's not really keen on that. But the one thing to his credit is if it's not essential, he will cut it out. And people are like, but what about that? We spent 4 days on that guitar track. I know, doesn't fit. And you need someone to kind of just say, you need someone to be reality, because if the producer doesn't catch it and the mixer doesn't catch it, then eventually the civilians are going to hear it, and the track's not going to work. So you need somebody to go, whoa, let's pare it down, make it understandable and palatable to people so they can get it. Otherwise, too much information, you can't hear it. And Will said this many times. You can hear like three things. You can hear like the chords, the vocal, and maybe a snare drum. But beyond that, you can't hear all the nuances and the stuff that
Yeah.
we're excited about, because it's just too much crap for a listener.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So sometimes simple is just better.
Almost
I think it is.
nobody who's a casual listener of music, which is almost everyone,
Yep.
can deal with more than three things being thrown at them at the same time. And if it's, and as it was told to me when I was younger, and if it's a pop song, it's probably two, and one of those is always the vocal. So pick the other two things you want an audience to pay attention to at any given time. And if in the verse it's this thing, but now in the chorus there's another thing that comes up, well, one of them has to go away, or it has to get quieter to make room for this one. And it's really very true. Once you get up to four, boy, even as somebody who's used to doing this all the time, like I'm starting to get a little confused. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be paying attention to, and it removes impact
Yeah.
from the song.
One of the analogies I use with people when they don't quite understand it, I say, okay, here, imagine this. You've got a group of people on a stage and you got a spotlight. You can spotlight one or two people really clearly and that everybody else can see. But if you want to see everybody on stage, you open it up and everything is seen with like less than half of light. So that's what mixing is. It's just you're just adjusting the aperture. You
Yeah.
focus on a few things, you can hear them very clearly, or you can have a whole stage full of instruments. But guess what? You're never going to really hear anything because the light is too diffuse. Your focus is too diffuse.
That's a really good one. I think, yeah, you
Yeah.
both sort of said that really perfectly. That's very much
Thanks.
the truth for post as well. Like I'm sort of choosing over time how much, yeah, we're focusing on whatever we're supposed to be focusing on, and part of the craft is designing that, you know.
Boy, a
What is it?
Foley artist might have worked really hard on those footsteps, but if you can't hear the dialogue because the footsteps are so loud,
Yeah.
who cares? The scene's
Exactly right.
wrecked.
Yep, that's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I guess
Yeah.
it's knowing what the scene is supposed to do emotionally, which is
Yeah.
what matters, as we said, and then you can sort of craft these things and work out what your priorities are. But if you don't
Yeah.
know what it
I think
is,
I think that's very similar with the actor on the screen hearing his or her voice is the same thing as hearing the narrator of a song. Those are the most important things, and then everything else kind of should support that really,
yeah,
and it should not obscure it. So that's really I think people lose sight of that sometimes.
it's amazing how much that it does overlap. You know, like it's
Yeah.
funny. They're completely different
Yes.
worlds,
Yeah.
but they are
Yeah.
the same thing, really.
Yeah. I wanted to get back to the original question just to say that I think in terms of if if there's any lessons to be learned for people about what your expectations should be when you hire a mix engineer, it's that if you haven't heard, like if you're not listening to your production and feeling like it feels good the way it is now, like you've recorded enough and the rough mix you have feels solid and you're pretty confident in it, it's not ready to mix yet. You can't push that. You can't expect a mix engineer and I've had the same thing happen to mastering engineer friends where somebody will record and mix something themselves and they think that the magical step where their thing turns into the thing that sounds like all the music that they love is mastering.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely not. And really, can we do it at the mixing stage? We can. We have the tools available to us, but you're going to have to go around and around and around with us, because if you hand us a thing that doesn't sound the way you want it to sound, it's like, well, I wanted it to be this much bigger, punchier, fatter thing, and you're not sure how to get it there. You're relying on us. And the chances are, though, that you have an idea in your head of what all those words mean to you. And we may have a different idea about it,
Yeah,
but we haven't been around for the process up until that point. So we don't know what your idea is. And now we're going to get into this cycle of, all right, well, as a mix engineer, here's what I thought you wanted. And you're going to go, ooh, but that's not what I wanted at all. Like, okay, but I don't know what that was supposed to be in the first place. And I had to do a lot of work to get it to here. So what do you want? And now it's, well, can we change this? Can I hear this option? Can we do that? And this is all production. These are all decisions that needed to be made before a mix engineer was involved.
Yep. Very true.
yeah. I mean, I'm seeing more overlaps with post. People actually talk about like pretty much everything you said. Is directly related to this one thing. People say, don't fix it in post because no one likes to do that. It's a big one. Fix it in pre, right? Fix it in pre. Do it before that. So when you're recording the song, when you're writing the song is when those decisions happen. And then, yeah, essentially the same as a movie.
It's
You
that
can't do it in
lesson.
post. Too late.
I think that lesson has been true since the dawn of recording anything. Is the earlier in the process you have intention and you're making it sound the way you want it to sound, the better the end product is going to be. The more you push off those decisions, the bigger the decision tree gets, and the more likely it is you're not going to end up with the thing you intended in the first place.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, one of the biggest influences on a great mix is arrangement. If you arrange the
Oh,
instruments right, you don't have too many instruments. You look like a genius mixer. You just put it with faders, like, look at me, I'm a genius, because they've actually arranged it in such a way that you don't have seven guitars. You've got two guitars, and then something else comes in. So arrangement's very, very important.
huge. And it's a
Yeah.
big part
Yeah.
of what we do as mixers too. So that's, Matt talking about
Mm.
Chris Lord Algae. What he's doing is saying, you gave me one too many things for somebody to listen to. And so I made an arrangement choice.
Yes, pretty
Right.
much.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep.
Hey, he knows what he's doing. I suppose
Yeah.
with all this stuff, like it's not the sexiest things that maybe people think
No.
they want to to know, but that's absolutely the truth. And sometimes it is simpler, and it really is like yeah. If you're looking for the best mixing tips, like people are looking for the latest plugins and all this stuff,
Yeah.
right? None of that shit matters
No.
if this doesn't happen.
Mm.
Matt does almost all of his mixing with the stock plugins that come with Pro Tools.
Awesome.
And his mixes sound amazing.
That's awesome. Alex.
Yeah, I use Bomb Factory 1176. I use the original Avid 7-band EQ.
Cool. Hey, if it works, it works. That's awesome.
But that's we get into this culture of, I'm only one purchase away from being an amazing engineer. And no, you're not. You're 10 years of hard work and experience away from being an amazing engineer. You can do it. You can get there, but it's not going to be, it's not, us having access to expensive gear is not what allows us to make great records.
100%. Yeah. In
Yeah,
fact, actually,
absolutely.
probably having the experience, obviously, of being in a situation where you're not in access to that. That's what crafts you, I guess, the ability to learn and build up on whatever you do have, and that's where the experience comes from, because it's
Yeah.
not the easy, most expensive thing that just works. You've got to find it. That is a big thing to say as well, I guess.
And you have to have an understand. It's funny. One of our neighbors is experiencing this very thing right now. We've got a great production team that have a studio next to ours, and I loaned them a really good microphone, and they've been using a decent microphone, but not as good as the one I gave them. And
Can you
they
say what
texted
you gave
me.
them?
Huh? It's a custom mic. So
Okay,
there's
sweet.
two of them in the world, and I own them both.
Oh, beautiful. Love that.
It's similar to, I would say, it's in the same vein as like a Tube U47.
Nice.
So they immediately started texting me going, "Oh my God, we're bypassing plugins in our vocal chain because we don't need them with this microphone." And I'm like, "Isn't that awesome? You would never have appreciated that or never understood what this was doing for you unless you had that other experience first." And I went through the same thing where, when I started, everything's really scrappy. So did Matt. Everything's really scrappy. And you're hanging on, by the seat of your pants and trying to get these recordings done. And when you get a better piece of equipment, all of a sudden you're like, well, I used to have to do these 5 things to get this to be the thing I wanted it to be. Now I don't have to do any of them anymore. That's what's great about this.
Exactly. In fact, I've talked about this on the podcast before, that specific thing where you kind of have to have this starting situation of how you approach buying gear is essentially what it was talking about. And for me, it's like, well, if I I could just buy the best thing in the world if I had money, right? Does that make me know how to use it? Not necessarily at all. It's got way more to do with why I'm needing it, why I want to use it, than what it is even. So you have to know what you're doing, I guess. You know what you're trying to do and what that piece of equipment choice is is it right for that? You have to know how to get to that. Like, it's the formula. And I think, yeah, that's kind of what you're saying there. If you haven't been through the hardships of even, knowing what those things are, then you're not going to appreciate the good gear.
Even with this room, I feel like had we not started off with this 7.2.4 setup, I don't think we would have understood what was better about the 9.2.4 setup.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's this, you have to live without something to appreciate the what the better thing's giving you. But you also know, Matt's made hit records with, like you were saying, the Faith No More record, one guitar, one amplifier.
Mm-hmm.
That So you understand what the luxury of having more choices is, but at the same time, you understand that what the advantage of no choices is. And sometimes that's a huge advantage. And choice is no guarantee of success.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
That's really powerful, guys. So well, I think we might wrap it up pretty soon. Is there anything that you guys wanted to like talk about or shout out? Any projects that you want to talk about?
Yes, you had that post that you put up about mixes, Atmos mixes versus the format. It's what made me send you the initial message was an
Okay.
article about about good good Atmos mixes or good immersive mixes uh, being what's important as opposed to blaming the format every time you hear something that isn't pleasing to you. Matt and I have been doing this for 4 years, and because we got in so early, we knew a part of our job would be evangelizing for the format. We would have to convince people, who may not have heard this, who may not understand it. We needed to give them an experience that made them go, yes, I want my music to be presented this way. And as happens anytime a new thing comes along and there's a potential for people to make money, a bunch of people jumped into the space and went, what's the cheapest, fastest way I can do this? There's a lot of work on offer. Let's get out the vacuum and suck up as many dollars as we can. And who cares what it sounds like in the end? Because who cares? It's nobody's doesn't matter to me. I grab my paycheck. And what happened is the market got, or the streaming services got flooded with a bunch of mixes where people had just taken like the stereo files, run them through a piece of software, smeared them around the room into a bunch of other speakers, and went, here's your Atmos mix. So when people hear that, because folks may not know, if you have Apple Music, it defaults to playing you the Atmos mix, unless you go in and flip a switch and tell it to play you the stereo mix. Stereo mix is still there. You can hear it whenever you want, but you are getting by default the Atmos mix if one is available.
Yeah.
So people started getting these honestly terrible sounding mixes, and there was already a bunch of resistance even in the recording community to immersive formats in general. And all of this fed the fire of, see, the format sucks, but it's not the format. When you mix well for it, it sounds incredible, even with all the problems that the binaural fold downs can have. I mean, I just did a mix. It doesn't happen often. Usually I'll feel like, all right, well, the stereo mix and especially the Apple spatial audio mix they're equal, but one's not better than the other. I recently did a mix for a single. Now I mixed both the stereo and the Atmos, where I put on the Atmos mix on Apple Music and I went, oh my God, this is flat out better than my stereo mix. This is presenting more like what I want so it's absolutely possible. And I know it's tough for people to understand, but if you hear something that doesn't sound great in Atmos, it's not because Atmos is bad. It's because somebody needed to put a little more time and effort into the mix they did. And that's true in stereo too. A bad stereo mix is a bad stereo mix. It's not the fault of the two speaker system.
I can agree completely. I think that's a big one because people, they still talk about this thing as like being the Wild West and all that. And I'm not even, here to say that's true, not true, but
I think
essentially it mostly is. But the thing is, like, people have also talked about the idea that there's also all this time been spent from, not just stereo, mono, stereo, all of those formats that people have kind of worked out the gists of the right ways to do things after a bit of time and experimentation. We are seeing that a little bit now more with Atmos, that there are best practices that we can lean into. And some of it is great, some of it's still being developed, and it's like it's fun. But in general, the immersiveness of something is really down to that emotional intent still. And then, it's placing things just straight into two channels and then spreading that around sounds like it's not ever going to work because it's not really the immersive thing. Isn't it like I've said this before as well. Part of what makes it immersive is the fact that there's different things coming from around you, not the same thing. You just have phased mess if otherwise, right?
I did a recording. It was actually an ambisonic recording
Cool.
of a string section that was arrayed all the way around the microphone. And I brought it back to the studio and I had Matt listen to it and he goes, I don't know, it doesn't feel very impressive to me. He's like, it's probably because it's the same thing coming from everywhere. There's no way to differentiate. I turn my head and it's the same thing. It's strings wherever I look.
Yeah.
And that was really instructive to me. You know, like, oh, of course, just like anything else, the thing we grab onto is the contrasts.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And I did say I want to wrap up pretty soon, but that's a very interesting one because the thing people miss is they sort of assume that when you place something in this many speakers, bigger is better, and it's really just not about that. It's the direction of multiple things hitting from different angles, and it's layering that does it. Same as a stereo mix where you're layering tracks in that way. We're just putting them in more places, but it's not the same thing on top of each other. That's like putting 10 guitars on top of each other. That's definitely worse, as we said. So it's like knowing what you're doing.
One of my earliest experiences once we got the room up and running was, and Matt and I have talked about this a bunch, where we say you have to unlearn about 70% of what you know about mixing in stereo.
Yep.
And then relearn it either entirely or retool what you knew in a different way, because the stuff you're used to leaning on to make a mix work in stereo does not apply in Atmos. And one of those things that was like, I was coming to this, as everybody does, I think, with a bunch of assumptions about what I knew and what I didn't know about what this was going to sound like. And the first one that really landed on me was I panned something up to the height speakers and I got confused because it didn't sound the way I expected it to sound. And then began a journey of me going, okay, well, if it doesn't sound the way I expected it to sound, why doesn't it sound that way? How do I mix based on this new information of this not being what I thought it was going to be? And then I started comparing. I was like, okay, well, I guess if I get a chorus pedal and I plug it into a guitar, I don't get a chorus out the other end. It's an effect. And I started thinking about it that way. And then we had a conversation with our friend Carrie Thomas, who's worked for both Dolby and Apple in the immersive worlds, and really was one of the early champions of Atmos for music, played a huge role with all of us in getting us started.
Yeah.
Carrie's got multiple degrees in acoustics. And he said, the thing about the way human beings hear is we have great directionality from ear to ear in front of us. As soon as you start going this way, as soon as you get past, 180 degrees over here, our ability to localize sounds gets very bad. And the reason for that is if something makes a noise behind you that grabs your attention, what do? You turn around. And now the part of you that can spatialize really well is facing in that direction. So I was like, oh, that's why if I put a tambourine or something up here, now it's this amorphous thing that sounds kind of weird and doesn't have the definition I want. That's why, because I'm not built to hear. None of us are built to hear that way. Same thing if you put that's why a drum kit behind you doesn't make sense unless it has a weird amorphous effect. So yeah, there's a lot of lessons like that, a lot of them that we've tripped over in the time we've been doing this. And every time we think we got a handle on it, we find another one and go, okay, time to
Add it
retool.
to the list.
Yep.
Add it to the list. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Our ears have really grown to a point we hear really well, like this part forward. We got great high end, high frequency, everything. Everything's there, but anything behind you or above you, it's going to be rounded off. It's not going to be as articulated. That's just how it is. And that's kind of how we know where we are in space, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I tend to use that actually to actually sort of help me decide where things should be based on their tone like that, particularly for post and ambiances and things like that. I like doing things like kind of brighter things in front of me, and then if there's like I'm in a forest or something, then I'm going to put kind of a darker one in the sides and the rears because it already leans to the immersive effect of how our ears work. So I already kind of naturally do that, and then
Absolutely.
added on is, so it works kind of well for music too, I'm imagining.
It's a full circle thing back to
Yeah.
you can't ask somebody to pay attention to more than 2 or 3 things at a time. The things you want them to pay attention to have to be in front of them. Period. That's just how it works. And then you can stage things front to back based on how important they are or what kind of effect you want it to have on them. But the vocal, if you want someone to listen to your lead vocal all the way through the song, then it needs to be in front of them.
That's very valid. Totally fair. Well, I think we might round it off there, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. This has been great.
No problem at all. Yeah, no, I very much appreciate it. Did you want to do a quick plug for any websites and things like that to get in contact with you guys?
We don't really have a website. We have Instagram.
Yet.
We have an Instagram account. We're at Studio Delux Immersive on Instagram. I'm at WK Producer. Matt is at Wizard Wallace, so you can find us there.
Awesome.
But that's kind of, or you just reach out to, people are reaching out to Frank, right, Matt?
Yeah, pretty
email?
much. Yep. My manager, Frank,
Frank McDonough, McDonough Management handles
MCD
bookings
man.
for us. So,
Great. Yep. Okay, so guys, if you're interested, definitely go follow these guys on Instagram and go talk to Frank if you're interested in booking. But thank you guys again very much for the chat, and we had a lot of fun with this one.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
No problem, guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time and appreciate the questions, everything. Really well done. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure having you on. Well, we'll keep in contact, and I'll speak to you very soon.
Sounds great. Thank you. All right, take care.
All right, bye.